share with you my favorite story in the Bible. And I know just like myself, you probably have a favorite story in the Bible too. And I'm guessing your favorite story probably is because you can relate to it quite a bit, which is the reason this is my favorite story. I'll pull this out. And first I want to share with you, though, before my husband and I came here, we were in another country. And we were in the country of Belgium. We also got to see a tiny, tiny bit of Germany. And we were able to go to Ireland afterwards. But if you've ever been to another country, what do you always do before you go? Wow, learn the language. Chan, you need to be commended because that is that is a lot more than I did. But whenever I go to a new country, I always want to know, what are the things I should see there? What is that country known for? And so when I was looking things up, this wasn't my first time to Belgium, but the first time I looked it up, one of the things I wanted to do was based on what I heard was very popular. This one, does anybody know what this is? Christmas markets. The last time I went was 2017, and so it's same exact time of year. I don't know why I only get invited to go to cold countries or countries when it's really cold outside, but I wanted to see a Christmas market. They are beautiful, and I have to say, they are just as beautiful as you're told. They usually have castles or very historical buildings right around them. And this courtyard, which you can't see from this picture, but the one in Brussels, they actually do a light show. So they play music and then they dance the lights around the buildings in different colors and everything. And it was beautiful. So that was one thing that we wanted to do. Another thing, what else is Belgium known for? Not tools, but if you look closely, you'll see these are not tools. They're chocolate in the shape of tools. And yes, we did have some chocolate while we were there. Another thing Belgium is known for, Belgian waffles, where we get the name from. Did you know there's actually 2 types of waffles, though, in Belgium? This is my husband's and my favorite one. This is the lightest. This waffle was not the one we ate this time, but it tasted exactly the same. This one is probably 1 foot by just slightly shorter than a foot. It's huge. And you can eat it very easily because it is the lightest, crispiest on the outside, nice and soft on the inside. It feels like you're eating nothing. It's so light. The other ones that we typically eat here are very dense and thick and very sweet. They were a little too sweet for me. But Belgium is known for waffles. How about this one? Pommes frites. Now, I do have to warn you, if you are a plant-based eater, you cannot have these. The first time I was there for 10 days, and I kept wondering why I'd been there so long and I hadn't gotten to eat any yet. And it was the last night that I was there, and everybody in my group, I had told that I wanted to have them, and they said, "Oh, aren't you vegetarian?" And I said, "Yes." They said, "Oh, they fry these in beef fat, so you may not want to eat it." So I never got to eat it, even though they're known in Belgium for their pommes frites. And instead of putting ketchup, they put all these different flavored mayonnaises on them. So if you don't like mayonnaise, you probably won't like this. If you like mayonnaise, you'll love it. But you also probably want to like meat too, because it's in that. But another thing that Belgium is known for is this. Antwerp specifically is known as the diamond capital of the world. So the vast majority of all diamonds go through Antwerp, and 80% of mined diamonds are suitable for use as gemstones and are used industrially. So a lot of the diamonds go through there, but not all diamonds are used for, rings and bracelets and necklaces and earrings and that sort of thing, but they're actually used for other things. They can be used to polish, cut, or wear away any material, including other diamonds. So how do you cut a diamond? You cut it with another diamond. Common industrial applications for this include diamond tip drill bits and saws and the use of diamond powder as an abrasive. Now, I don't know a ton about diamonds, but I have learned some things about diamonds. And one of the things is diamonds are not all the same, just like people are not all the same. And diamonds are rated primarily based on their purity. But how do you know a diamond's purity? Is through 4 distinguishing C's. The first one is color. So you want your diamond to look more like the D example up there than the Z one. You want it to be a clear, pure diamond. And in fact, some of the things that we might think are clear are not as clear as we think they are. It takes a trained eye to see specifically how clear that diamond is. So the color is very important, but also the cut is very important to a diamond. You want to see that the person who cuts the diamonds, who creates the diamonds, they want to cut it in a way that allows more light to shine through it and reflect off of those varying sides of the diamond. So you can see the more sides it has, the more option it has to sparkle, and it takes a very skilled craftsman to cut it in a way that allows more light to shine through it. But also, a diamond is rated on clarity. So if you look at that picture above, you can see that the one on the far right is not as clear as the one on the far left, because you can see little inclusions, those little blemishes, in other words, on there. So it also takes a trained eye to see some of those things as well. Although, a less quality diamond, you could probably see them pretty easily. And then the last one that we also know a diamond's purity by is by its carat weight. So the bigger the diamond or the heavier the diamond, the more expensive and valuable it is. So you can see the one on the right, bigger diamond, it would be more expensive. But it takes all of those things together. So it's not just the bigger the diamond, it also has to do with the color and the cut and the clarity of that large diamond. And so what are we looking for? One that has the most of everything in it too. And I want to share with you a story from the Bible that I believe shows a diamond. And that is the story of Joseph. I believe Joseph was a diamond. In Genesis 37, this is where we start the story of Joseph, and it says, "And when his brethren, or his brothers, saw that their father loved Joseph more than all his brethren," in verse 4, it says, "they hated him and could not speak peaceably unto him." And then in verse 5, it continues, "And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told his brothers, and they hated him yet the more. And his brethren said unto him, Shall thou indeed reign over us, or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And verse 8, "And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words." Sorry, I didn't turn the slide. What do you get so far? What are you noticing? Do you think Joseph was being treated very well by his brothers? And he had a lot of brothers. He was not being treated very well by his brothers. They hated him, and who knows why they hated him. When I worked in the group home, we had a term I would hear often called hater. What is a hater? Not just somebody who hates somebody, but usually it's someone who hates somebody because that person is better than they are. Better at something, like you're better at sports, you're better at music, whatever the case may be. The kids would say to each other, "Oh, you're a hater," because You're hating on the person that you envy, so to speak. And in 37, it continues on verse 10. It says, "And he told his dream to his father and his brothers, and his father rebuked him." So now it's not just his brothers, but now he's hearing from his dad too that he doesn't like him, or he's seeing his dad is rebuking him, and said unto him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee to the earth?" And his brothers envied him, but his father observed the saying. I don't think a lot of people spend enough time paying attention to that part. But his father observed the saying. Oh, sorry. I'm used to clicking, and so I forget to do this sometime. Yeah, thank you, honey. A lot of people don't realize so often when we're dealing with somebody, we want to see an immediate change in them. And so sometimes we argue and we fight with that person, and we're waiting for that person to go, "Okay, yeah, you're right," or "Oh, okay, yeah, I get it," or something like that. But you notice in this, it says, his father observed the saying. Do you know many times when we're sharing with somebody something, or we're saying something that's important for somebody to hear, it's actually the Holy Spirit who works on them after the fact. And it's not us who does the work, but it says his father observed the saying. So what does this tell us? His father was actually thinking about what Joseph said to him. And he's paying attention, and he's probably dwelling on it and wondering, why did my son say this? What's the significance of him bringing this up? And why is this happening in our home and everything? But his father was paying attention. And I think one of the reasons for that is that even though Joseph's father didn't know exactly why he was saying these things, Joseph's father had a relationship with God, did he not? And so God was pricking his heart so that he would observe these things too. And then in verse 18, it says, "And when they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him." So this is when Joseph now goes to Dothan to visit his brothers and check up on them for his father. And they see him from afar off. Obviously, they don't like him very much because they're conspiring on how to kill him. That's a pretty serious thing. Most of us, when we have difficulty in our relationships with other people, we don't have to worry about them trying to kill us, do we? But we're sad, we're forlorn, we're upset, we dwell on it, we think on it, we ruminate on these things over and over again. And yet Joseph here, he's having to contend with brothers who actually want to kill him. "And they said one to another, Behold, this dreamer cometh." They weren't saying that in a nice way, were they? They're taunting him. And in verse 20 it says, "They said, Come now therefore, and let us slay him and cast him into some pit, and we will say some evil beast hath devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. And it came to pass when Joseph was come unto his brethren, that they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors that was on him, and they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty, there was no water in it." So Joseph was alone. And many times in our relationships with people, we feel alone too. But I love this verse in chapter 39. It says, "And the Lord was with Joseph." Just want to stop there for a second, because it's easy to finish the verse, and yet what was so important for God to help us understand as we were reading the story of Joseph? It says, "And the Lord was with Joseph." And then we heard in Acts 7, verse 9, "And the patriarchs, moved with envy, sold Joseph into Egypt, but God was with him." Do you know it's really important when you're reading the Bible that you recognize the multiple times that God says the same thing? Why is that important? Why would God say something over and over again? Well, why do parents tell their children things over and over again? Why do commercials play over and over and over again in a TV show? Or why do they show a product over and over again when you're watching baseball or football or something like that? To put it into our minds, and God wanted us to see this too. But here's the thing, it doesn't just show up in Joseph's life. In Daniel 3, verse 24, it says, "Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished, and he rose in haste and spoke, saying to his counselors, 'Did we not cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire?' They answered and said to the king, 'True, O king.' 'Look,' he answered, 'I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the form of the 4th is like the Son of God.'" Where was God when his 3 worthies were going through the fire? He was with them, even visibly with them. And in Isaiah 7, verse 14, it says, "Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel." What does Emmanuel mean? Do you know this time of year, what is God trying to tell us? Where is he? He's with us. He's with us. Quite physically, he is with us. He wants us to know that he didn't just do that with our patriarchs, but he's with us now. He quite visibly sent his son Jesus to come to this earth. And so whatever we are going through, where should we think that God is? He's with us. He's absolutely with us. When you're dealing with family problems, where is he? He's right here, yes. When you're going through work problems, where is he? He's right here, right? When we're going through anything that we're struggling with, where is God? He is with us. And he doesn't always show us so we can see it in the moment, but when we look back, we can see that he was with us. Those who face discomfort together, research shows, reported greater feelings of trust and connectedness toward each other after the event and exhibit greater cooperation in an activity over those who engaged in painless activities. Why? Likely because it demands focus and reflection on the details of the experience and those we shared it with, says Australian psychologist Brock Bastian. So when we face discomfort together, what happens? We get feelings of trust and connectedness. But what happens when we go through difficult situations with God? What happens then? Do we not also develop feelings of trust and connectedness when we recognize that God is with us going through those things too? And then it causes us to have greater cooperation with us. What is God trying to do? Build faith. He gives us that little mustard seed of faith, Paul says, but then he wants to grow that with us. And how does he do that? He goes through difficult situations with us so we can see what he's capable of. But going back to Genesis 39 in verse 2, "And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian." Now, here's the thing. Not only was the Lord with Joseph, but Joseph had a part too. And Spirit of Prophecy tells us that Joseph's master was not prosperous because of a miracle that God did. But he was prosperous because Joseph was diligent and had a sense of duty about his role there as well. God wouldn't have made him prosperous if Joseph hadn't done his part as well. And so what do we need to do when we're going through difficult times? We need to do our part as Joseph did. And it came to pass in verse 5, from the time that he had made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had in the house and in the field, because of what Joseph did. And he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he knew not aught he had, save the bread which he did eat, and Joseph was a goodly person and well favored. Again, this is not a miracle that God did just to bless Potiphar's house, but he did it because Joseph was faithful too. God loves to mix himself with our efforts. He loves to take what we do and bless it, because many times God wants us to honor and glorify him. If we're not honoring and glorifying him in what we're doing, then how can he bless that? And so we need to do our part as well. And I do believe this is because, in the path between Dothan and Egypt, it was probably, I looked it up, about 250 to 300 plus miles that Joseph had to spend on his way to Egypt. That's a lot of time. And he didn't go in an airplane. He didn't go in a high, fast driving car. He went in a caravan, which probably took, many, many days to do that. So Joseph had a lot of time to think about, how do I want this to go? A lot of us have that situation too. This is one of the things that I spend a lot of time with people on, is not just, I could make a lot of money and be very, very successful if I could just give people magic pills to take them out of their difficult situations. You wouldn't see me here. I wouldn't have time to speak here if that were the case. I'd be all over the world helping people like Jeff Bezos and, Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, because I know he lives up here. But I'd be all over. Maybe I would be here because Bill Gates is here, but I would not be here because just get everybody out of their difficult situations. But I don't believe that's the most important thing. I want to teach people how to overcome their situations. That's what I really want to do, because we all know nobody goes to a gym and walks out the first time and goes, wow, I look amazing. I don't need to do this anymore, right? And most people don't walk out going, oh man, why don't I look any different? Because we all know it takes work to get to the place that we want to be. And God knows that too. And so oftentimes he lets us experience different things because we can see through that work what he can create us to be. But it says in Genesis 39, verse 7, and it came to pass after these things, so things seem to be going well for Joseph. He's in Potiphar's house. He's, in command of everything. After these things, that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, lie with me. Can't Joseph get a break? Seriously, poor guy. Verse 9, he says, there is none greater in this house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee, because thou art his wife. And then men especially, this is the key, this is how you answer anything like this if it comes your way. But we should all be thinking about this too when, temptation comes our way. What does Joseph say? He doesn't say, oh, you're his wife. I'd get in a lot of trouble if I did that. He doesn't say, oh, I'm waiting for my future wife. I'm sorry, I can't do that. He doesn't go, oh man, I could really get in all kinds of trouble, make all kinds of things difficult for myself. He says, how can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? What has Joseph been keeping at the forefront of his mind? And not just God, but God being with him and all of heaven being witness to what is happening in his life. Do we often think about this, that there is a whole witness of people, of heavenly beings watching what is happening in our lives? And we're on display for all of them to see. And Joseph is very aware of that. I believe he made a commitment to God on his trek from Dothan to Egypt that he was going to make his father's God his God and do nothing but be according to his will. And it came to pass, that wasn't enough to stop her though. It says, and it came to pass as she spake to Joseph day by day. So did the temptation go away? No. That he hearkened not unto her to lie by her or to be with her. He kept saying no. Sometimes we want the temptation to go away. Oh, why is this happening? Make it go away. And it came to pass in verse 19, when his master heard the words of his wife, which he spake unto him, because what did she tell her husband when she didn't get what she wanted? She lied. Oh, Joseph made a pass at me. He tried to get something from me. After this manner did thy servant to me, and his wrath was kindled. Now, we have a little help in understanding what actually happened here. If he had really thought that Joseph was that kind of man, what would have happened to Joseph? He would have easily been killed. But I think, Potiphar, to save face, he didn't want to look like he didn't take care of the problem, but he also didn't want to look like his wife wasn't faithful to him. So he put Joseph, it says, and Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound. Again, why is God letting this happen to Joseph? It's so easy when we're going through things like you think you just get something good and then all of a sudden something else happens. Why is God letting this happen? Or why doesn't God do something so Joseph doesn't have to endure this? This is actually one of the questions that I get from young people sometimes too. Not this exact one, but very similar. Young people will say, I want to do something really big for God, but I don't know what that is. I want to do something really big. And I always say, would you be willing to be a janitor for 10 years for God? Why do I ask that? Because what is God doing with Joseph here? Now, some people sign up for boot camp or training for something big. Does God go, hey, I've got something big for you I want you to do. Do you mind going through a bunch of junk before you get there? He doesn't often do that. What does he do instead? He says, trust me. Just trust me. And then he signs us up for those things. But are they to hurt us? No. They're actually to bring something good out. And in Genesis 40, verse 4, so Joseph was probably about 3 years with Potiphar, and now Joseph is in prison for about 10 years, roughly, but maybe at this point it's more like 8 years. And it says, and the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them. So why would a captain of the guard charge Joseph with taking care of prisoners? Do you think Joseph took the same character traits that he had shown in Potiphar's situation and taken those into prison with him? Was he on the ground going, God, why are you letting this happen to me? Unless you show me something, I'm not going to do anything for you. And just sit there and sulk for 8 years? No, what was Joseph doing? He was being faithful. He was taking whatever task was put in front of him and doing it for God, as though nobody else was watching. He was doing that for God. Do we do that too? Do we take every task in front of us, especially when we're going through difficult things? Do we take it and make the most of it, knowing that we're honoring God? The Bible tells us whether you've done it unto the least of these. Who's less than a slave or in jail? Someone in jail? Probably not anybody. But whether you've done it to them, God says you've done it unto me. And Joseph is showing his faithfulness. So the captain of the guard saw Joseph over these years and put him in charge of the butler and the baker. And they dreamed a dream, both of them, the butler and the baker, of the king of Egypt, which were bound in prison. And they said unto him, we have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said unto them, do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them, I pray you. I love how he always brings God into it. God's with him, and so he brings God into everything too. And the chief butler told his dream to Joseph, and Joseph said unto him, this is the interpretation of it, and he shared the interpretation. And then he says this, I love this. Sometimes people think we have to be, as Christians, we have to be wallflowers. Like we just have to sit back and take whatever happens to us. But what does Joseph do? He says, "But think on me when it shall be well with thee, and show kindness, I pray thee, unto me, and make mention of me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house." Isn't that fair? I did something for you. You can do something for me. Be faithful back. I almost think Joseph was, being a prophet too. If you're not going to do it, God will find a way for you to do it too. And then in chapter 40, verse 23, it says, "And did not the chief butler remember Joseph, but forgot him?" But who didn't forget him? God didn't forget him. He's still with him. And in chapter 41, verse 12, it says, "And there was there with us a young man." So who's speaking? The butler, because the dream came true for the butler and the baker, but the baker's not there anymore. And now Pharaoh has a dream, so the butler is sharing with Pharaoh. "A Hebrew servant to the captain of the guard, and we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams, to each man according to his dream he did interpret." And verse 14, "Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph." Does anybody know the implication of this? This doesn't just happen. Do we have, kings and presidents going into dungeons and prisons and going, "Hey, pull somebody out of there and bring them to me and I want a conversation with this person"? They have to be a pretty big deal before maybe the president brings them out of prison to talk to them. They have to be a pretty big deal before they go into prison to be big enough deal to come out. But what is Pharaoh doing? God has orchestrated events. So where is Pharaoh now? In a very desperate situation. Can God orchestrate events in your life to where the people that you think have no desire to talk to you, to, have you be any kind of influence in their life? Can God orchestrate events to make those things happen? Absolutely, he can. And so they brought him hastily out of the dungeon, and he shaved himself and changed his raiment and came in unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh tells him about the dream, and Joseph says in verse 16, "It is not in me, God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace." Sometimes we're afraid to say who we believe in, but Joseph, even coming out of the lowliest of places, what does he first tell Pharaoh? Who's with him? God is with me. Whatever you think I can do, it's not me, it's God that's doing it. And then in verse 28, he says, "This is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he showeth unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, For as much as God has showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art." Do you think that was Pharaoh's natural nature to say something like this? I don't think so either. I think this is nearly impossible to happen, except that we know God can do this. "Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou." Do you ever think your situation is impossible? Oh, nothing good can come out of this. It's too hard. It's too bad. It's been going on too long. It's too painful. "And he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And he gathered up all the food of the 7 years." That was Joseph. "And Joseph said unto his brethren," in chapter 45, verse 4, "Come near to me, I pray you." Because what was happening now? The famine came about, and now who needed who? Do you know that God can bring people back to you that have utterly decided not to have anything to do with you? Who think they're better than you, who think, they don't have any need of anything that you can offer? There really isn't anything that you can offer, but God can make it so they need you. I had a situation like this in my life happen. Somebody that I cared about didn't want to have a relationship with me. I won't go into all the details, but I saw over the course of 5 years praying that God was able to orchestrate events to where this person had to come back to me for help. What would you do in a situation like that? Seriously? You want my help now? Seriously, after everything you did, how you treated me? This must be so embarrassing for you to come back and ask me for help. No, he didn't do any of that. Joseph wept when they spake unto him. Do you know this has a huge parallel with Jesus' weeping too? Why did Jesus weep? Did he weep because, oh, nobody likes me and they're crucifying me? Did he weep because of that? No. What did he weep because of? How have you ever thought of unrequited love when it comes to Jesus? Jesus laid everything down for us. And how many people have reciprocated that love? That's the ultimate of unrequited love. Some of us may have a person here or there that doesn't love us back. But to have so much of humanity over so many years not love him back. And this isn't an egotistical weeping. This is I know what I can do for you, and why would you reject that? And that's why Joseph is weeping, because he always wanted a relationship with his brothers. He always wanted to be there for them. And they kept pushing him away and pushing him away. And now they need him. And he wanted that all along. He would have helped them in any way all along. And then, perhaps one of my favorite verses we see coming up. 19, it says, And Joseph said unto them, Fear not, for am I in the place of God? So Joseph doesn't taunt them with their need. He says, I'm not in the place of God. That's for God to iron out and take care of. And instead he says, But as for you, ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good to bring to pass as it is this day, to save much people alive. So what is he saying? Like, I don't resent you. I don't hate you. I've forgiven you a long time ago. And in fact, I've been able to see how God has used this to help all of us. How else would that have happened? I mean, God could come up with 1,000 different ways for that to happen. But God used Joseph in one of the most absurdly impossible ways to bring him up. You know, God could have just said, oops, make Pharaoh's army drop some food along the way so the Israelites can pick it up on any of their conquests. But no, God's like, I got a different way. I'm going to bring my people right through the center of Egypt up to the very top and have them help their own people out. What does that show us? God can do anything. One of my favorite things that I love to do is read stories of people who overcome. I want to know, what do I need to do when I get to that place one day? Because we're all going to be in that place, either sooner or later. But I want to know, what is the mindset of people who get through hard times? What do they do? How do they rely on God? What do they need to know? What are the difficulties that they go through, so that I don't have to look at it as though, I'm the only one who's going through that. Do you know that's one of Satan's lies? I'm the only one who's having to go through this. Seriously? Have I not met other people who've gone through difficult things? No, God can take anything, but we're all going to go through difficult things, but we can all be just like Joseph and be faithful in those things. And that's why I believe we are the other diamond. And I want to ask you some questions. Have you remained pure, or are you tainted by the things that are around you? Joseph, when he was going through Egypt, he took God with him in every single thing. No matter what kind of idolatrous behavior was going on around him, he stood up for God and he shunned idolatry and temptation. How are we when that happens? Do we take it on because we want to be like the world around us? Or do we remain pure? How about cut? What is your relationship with the light of the world? Do you spread light in a dark world? Have we had so many facets of us created through the difficult things that we've gone through that God can shine through us, that Christ can shine through us? How about clarity? What happens when you're exposed to pressure? Do you know that that's the only way a diamond is formed? Through pressure? If you want to be a diamond, you have to be able to withstand pressure and allow that pressure to shape you into the thing that God wants you to be. Do you come out pure when you go through those things? And carrot weight. What is your influence on those around you? What is your contribution to the kingdom of God, especially when you're going through those pressures? And I want to end with this quote. What God intends to do, you do not know. He has in the past accepted persons no more promising or attractive to do a great work for him. His Spirit, moving upon the heart, has aroused every faculty to vigorous action. The Lord saw in those rough, unhewn stones precious material that would stand the test of storm and heat and pressure. God sees not as man sees. You are a diamond in the rough. You are being shaped for something, and you have the opportunity, just like Joseph, to come out pure and undefiled, and for God to be able to use you for something great and good for his kingdom.